And then he said, okay, the lights will go out. When you hear them scream, just find your way through the water and jump up behind them. So what you see on their camcorder is actually what is happening. It's brilliant. That's why I'll always love horror, because you can explore a hell of a lot, but have a lot of fun with it as well.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the Dungeon of Deadly Delights. I am your host, Rob DiLauro. Thank you so much for joining me. First off, just want to let you guys know we thank you so much for your continued support. Tons of love from the fan pages, and we're just getting started. So I have a great guest here, obviously, but I just want to let you know that if you weren't aware, I did a show with fan questions last week. Deborah Voorhees is not going to be back until August 1st. She's actually filming her first horror movie. So I just want to give it up to her. She's, that's really exciting. It's technically like a Friday the 13th reunion. She's got practically everybody from the franchise in this movie. It's called 13 Fanboy. You guys can check it out. The trailer's on YouTube. We'll throw it up on here maybe for a second. But we just wanted to let her know that we love her, and, we're just so proud of her for this new juncture in her career. It's really, really great. So with that, this is awesome. We got some good stuff going on today. We're going to be talking apocalyptic films. That's going to be the topic for today. Got my guest here. Been a huge fan for a very, very long time. One of the main movies that I saw him in was called Doomsday, directed by Neil Marshall. We'll talk about that a little later, but I'm just happy for him. The movie's actually trending in the UK now, and a couple other places, right? How old is that movie now? It's got to be like 10 years, right?
Yeah, I mean, it makes me feel old when I look at it. I mean, I didn't have much hair in it to begin with, but I had more hair than what I've got now.
Hey, brother, same here. We probably look the same. We look like brothers. There you go.
Yeah, it's like the two Ronnies.
We can put our heads together and look like an arse.
Like one big arse.
All right. All right, guys. So listen, all jokes aside, huge fan of this guy. You've seen him in Doomsday. He played Scar in The Descent, which, happy birthday on that, by the way.
Yeah, thank you very much.
He's in The Fades. Dude, go ahead and tell him. Give him a list, because it's an awesome list. And you got some new stuff coming up that you wanted to talk about, too.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess recently we've had Mara, which is a directorial debut from Clive Towne. Final Score with Dave Bautista and Pierce Brosnan. And then what else did we do this year? Oh, yeah, we just finished shooting at the beginning of the year. We did a movie called The Courier with Gary Oldman, and again with Olga Kurylenko, which was fantastic to do. And then The Current War, which is currently coming out at the moment with Benedict Cumberbatch and Michael Shannon, although I am literally a very small part in that, but it was great fun being on set with those guys. So yeah, there's some nice stuff. Yeah, and then a couple of projects in the bubble, hopefully, which will be shooting later this year. So yeah, one called South of Hope Street with good old Michael Madsen and Judd Nelson, and Tana Friedrich, and a few other people who I can't think at the moment because it's late at night, and I'm trying to keep my eyes open.
Well, I heard a lot of good things about Mara. That's you stepping back into horror, right?
Yeah. Well, Mara was it was quite a mad one, that, because we originally did a trailer, like a teaser, to get the funds for it, but we shot that, and I think it took us almost from the time we shot that trailer till the time it came out on the cinema. It was 10 years in total.
I wanted to ask you about the
pretty insane.
I wanted to ask you about The Descent real quick, because you were the main creature, right?
Yeah, that's right.
You're the one that the girls actually saw for the first time?
That's right. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
That's awesome.
which was quite a brilliant thing to do. I mean, Neil really wanted that to be the main moment, and we'd rehearsed. We all knew what we were doing, and then we were all hidden into the cave system that Simon Bowles had lovingly put together in Pinewood. And then he said, "Okay, the lights will go out. When you hear them scream, just find your way through the water and jump up behind them." So what you see on their camcorder is actually what is happening.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
So like I said, we're going to be talking about apocalyptic films today. And the reason I wanted to do this is because, like, you know what? It seems like we're always on the precipice, though, doesn't it? Like, anything could, like, happen at any given moment.
More than ever now.
You never know.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of really great apocalyptic films out there. Not trying to be too, dark with it or whatever, but, like, I was actually thinking about Doomsday the other day, and it just kind of gave me the idea where I'm just like, you know what? Yeah, let's do that. And I asked Craig to come on. Craig Conway, by the way, guys, man, this is fantastic. You did this for me, brother. Thank you so much.
No, you're very welcome, man.
So, since we're talking about apocalyptic films, like, you want to start off? Like, what's one of your favorites in the catalog there?
Well, I think one of the first kind of apocalyptic things I ever came across was George Orwell's 1984.
Yes.
And I was very fortunate as a young stage actor. We did a multimedia version which toured all over England and Europe, and I got to play Winston Smith and spend time with George Orwell's son quite a lot, and I ended up playing George Orwell. But that show in itself really set into my kind of head, and so it's something that we always bear in mind, not just our own kind of mortality, but the mortality of the world and how we view it. And so it's a topic that really can never grow old, because it's always kind of slightly looming, isn't it? You know what I mean?
Isn't it very strange how all these dystopian novels and movies or stuff are kind of bleeding into our existence? It's very crazy.
Absolutely, man. It is. It's very scary, and it's funny because at the moment the whole climate change issues that are going on, and I find it quite bizarre. I was chatting to a couple of friends the other day, and they were saying, God, it's all really beginning to feel quite apocalyptic as well, without being too down on it. But it's crazy times, isn't it?
It's very crazy. So actually, you know what? I'm going to do this because, like, I had it planned anyway. This isn't to, like, pat him on the butt or anything like that. But one of my favorites, since we're, like, going down the list, is obviously Doomsday, because Neil Marshall made a film that was so cohesive, but it had, like, 20 different storylines going on at the same time. It was incredible that he was able to blend all that together. You know what I mean? You had zombies and a plague, and you had Saul and his marauders, and it was phenomenal, man. It was such a good movie. And like, just from your particular standpoint alone, like, you had very little dialogue. I mean, you had the party scene, but a lot of like the inflection and what you learn from your character is, like, basically from your mannerisms. He's just a fucking psycho. You know what I mean? Like, that read loud and clear. Like, you don't want to mess with this guy,
No, he's kind of he's at the very far end of activism, isn't he? You know what I mean?
He eats very well, though.
He does. Yeah, he does. He likes a good meal, definitely.
You had a little Sean Pertwee when you were doing the movie.
Yeah, man. I mean, Sean, he's one of my dearest friends, and we love working together. And spending time together offset as well, but it was so much fun, that movie. I mean, it really was, and I got to live out every kind of rock star fantasy I'd ever wanted to try and achieve. So it was great from that perspective. But it was one big party. I mean, that opening scene for Saul was actually my first night on set.
Mm-hmm.
And we did 3 days in that particular place in South Africa called Ratanga Junction.
Yeah.
And so you've got, like, however many 1,000 extras or whatever. And Neil just said, right, look, we've got 3 or 4 cameras. We're just going to go for it, just see what comes out. And that was it. And we just shot it. And it was just great fun from beginning to end, man.
Well, the interesting thing about it is if like like I have a huge respect for Neil Marshall's work. Like I love a lot of his work, but if you didn't know, like you would have thought maybe John Carpenter directed that film. There was
Yeah,
such a
absolutely.
great homage to Carpenter and his like renegade style. Obviously Rona Mitra kind of mirroring like Snake Plissken, and it was just a wonderful film, and it was fucking weird, dude. Like you had knights all of a sudden, you know what I mean, and horses and armor, and then it was awesome. It was such a good movie. That's definitely one of my favorite, we'll say, apocalyptic films. Definitely. Like there's so much that we could talk about when it comes to that, but you lived it. There's no reason to really like get into it.
Yeah, man. I think Neil was doing exactly what you said though there. I think he was just basically kind of, doffing the cap to all the films that had inspired him, and it was his chance to go, right, this is me, this is what I like. And then, you can see where his career's gone on to the Game of Thrones, doing all the kind of finale scenes and Lost in Space. Everything he's done, basically Doomsday has a little bit of everything he loves in that movie. And I think when it was first released, it was kind of a wrong time for it, which is why, bizarrely now, like you say, with all the stuff that's going on in the world of politics and the papers, suddenly it's trending on Netflix again, because I think people are connecting to it in a very different way now.
I agree with that. And by the way, when it comes to Neil Marshall, I love the new Hellboy, so I thought it was pretty. Did you see that flick? It was pretty good, right?
I haven't seen it yet, but actually I was in it originally.
Oh, really?
And yeah, and me and another guy, and they ended up not using the scenes that we flew out to do for a couple of days. So I'm looking forward to seeing it actually, because I do want to see it.
Yeah, Harbor's just awesome. I hope you get a chance to work with that guy. He seems like really cool, like down to earth guy.
Yeah, everybody who I met out there, actually, when we went to Bulgaria, they all seemed like really lovely people.
Yeah, that's awesome. So do you have anything else for the list there? I know you were talking about Mad Max there for a second.
Yeah, man. I mean, Mad Max is just my all-time favorite. It really is. I just think that just everything about it, but it's the rawness of it that gets me. I mean, that's what, there's a lot of apocalyptic movies with lots of stuff going on and huge explosions and all this, but the original Mad Max for me is just that dry, arid, is this what our world is, and everybody's fighting for the smallest bit for survival, and to me that's what I love. I love the rawness of it, and I think Mel Gibson, it possibly is his absolute finest hour.
Wow. It's interesting you say that, because I think it was actually The Road Warrior, because my dad, the reason why I'm into film so much is because of my dad. My dad was showing me some crazy shit when I was stuff probably you shouldn't show kids when they were young, but he had his own demons at the time, and he's just like, hey man, he was like more like a buddy at that point, so he showed me The Road Warrior. That was the first time that I was introduced to George Miller's world. And I got to be honest with you, man, when I saw Max for the first time, that was almost like seeing like a Han Solo or something. Like I instantly fell in love with that character, man. Just the everything about him, And then of course I saw the original, like maybe, when I was a teen, like years and years later. But I mean, just a phenomenal body of work, as far as George Miller's world and the way he basically just created, everything from scratch. It was all from his mind, but it was all like, he's got like a roadmap to everything he's ever done. Like even the side characters, within the Wasteland, he's got like everything written down. Like he's like the George Lucas of the apocalypse for sure. Like he's got so much, invested in that world. It's not, just him just doing something for the sake of doing something. It really means something to him. And you could tell from these movies.
Absolutely, man. There's no stone kind of left unturned there. The work has been put in, and it shows,
Yeah. Well, there's one I want to bring up that it's pretty cult. I don't know why it didn't do better. It's Joss Whedon. It's called Cabin in the Woods. I don't know if you've ever seen that, Craig.
I have seen it. Yes, I have.
Yeah, the reason why I love that movie is because, like, we know him from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. We know him from all these different creations before. And it seems like, in a way, it's a very weird movie because it's like, he loves horror, but at the same time, he kind of fucking hates it too. You know what I mean? It's a
Yeah,
really deep
yeah.
love-hate that you see, you know, like with the tropes and stuff. He obviously did not like that at all, you know, when it comes to like classic horror. But also, like, it almost seemed like he imploded his own world. Like, don't talk to me about Buffy anymore. Don't, you know, this is, you know, like he just basically just blew it all up. You know what I mean?
It's true, actually. It does feel like he's just making a stand, doesn't it? Do you know what I mean? And kind of saying, okay, this is what else I can do. Have a look at this.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah. You know, and just like, you know, just the idea was phenomenal. You know, I know there were some things that they were saying, like, you know, I guess there was some guy in I can't remember, somewhere in California. I guess he was like selling books on a, you know, like on a beachside corner or something, and supposedly there's some sort of plagiarism going on. But you know what? It's an original story, you know, regardless of where it came from. It works so effectively. And, you know, like that was way before. I think they actually shelved that movie for quite a few years because they were waiting for Chris Hemsworth to become a star. And,
Oh, really?
you know, like, yeah, I think that was what they did. So, you know, of course he did Thor and all that stuff. And, you know, like he just blew up. So they were just like, oh, this is the opportunistic time to put it out. Yeah, that movie was shelved for quite a few years before. Yeah. But I also love the concept of where at the end they're just basically like, you know what, fuck it, let's let somebody else have a chance. You know, we've had our run. You know, so I just thought that movie was phenomenal. I just thought it was such a good
man. God, you know what? I wouldn't have thought of that. The other one I was thinking about was 28 Days Later.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you know, and also just thinking because of Danny Boyle, thinking about, you know, him as a director as well, the amount of different styles and different genres he's placed himself in. The man is constantly making interesting choices and never stuck in the same rut.
Never.
And I love that about him. I absolutely adore that about Danny Boyle.
Like he's doing Yesterday right now. You know what I mean?
I know, man. Have you seen it?
I have. Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah.
It's a really cool concept. You know, like, could you imagine like one day waking up and just like all of a sudden like everybody just doesn't remember a particular catalog from a certain band? You're just like, you know what, I'm gonna capitalize on that shit.
it could be very good in some ways though, because there's some shit music out there.
Oh yeah, for sure, 100%. Yeah. But yeah, no, you're right. He never pigeonholes himself. He does something like Train Spotting, and I think, you know, like maybe the actual only sequel he did, if I'm not mistaken, is Train Spotting 2. But even that was like kind of different in itself from the original. Quite different.
Yeah. Yeah, very different. Yeah.
Yeah, but 28 Days Later, I got an interesting story about that one because I had mentioned this before in passing to other people, but I was in a theater. I can't remember how old I was. It was quite a few years ago, obviously, but my friends and I went to see The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. That movie is absolute shite, okay? So I'm literally like scratching to get out of this theater. I'm like, oh my God, this movie's terrible, you know? And I don't like shitting on art now. Like, I've changed. But I go outside, and there was a couple that actually were walking out at 28 Days, and they were just like, oh, that movie's terrible. And I'm like, what did you go to see? And they're like, 28 Days. They're like, we were only there for like 20 minutes. We're like already bored. I said, do you want to trade? So we traded tickets. They went into my shitty movie. I went into 28 Days. And dude, brilliant. I'll tell you, it's like one of the best experiences I ever had. I'm so happy I switched that ticket because that movie's just amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, man. That's great.
It was an amazing, amazing movie. And I know a lot of people have issue with the fact that, like, you know, they're in the Romero mode of, like, you know, slow zombies and all that stuff, but they weren't zombies. They were people that were infected. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it was a totally different idea. Yeah. I wouldn't necessarily even really call it a zombie movie. I guess in certain regards I would, but not really.
No, I think you're right. I think that's the thing, isn't it? But people tend to try and want to understand it in a very simple way. And I think the film's got a lot more kind of complexity going on, a few more layers than just a zombie movie, you know.
Yeah.
In fact, most of them have. You know what I mean? Dawn of the Dead, all these things. They're all. There's many people work in horror who just do the baseline surface horror movies. There's a lot of them out there that get made that way, but most successful horrors are absolutely riddled with layer upon layer of content and deep thought and, there's lots of stuff there, lots of views, and I think that's why the genre is brilliant. That's why I'll always love horror, because you can explore a hell of a lot, but have a lot of fun with it as well.
Well, I'm going to go against the grain again, and I'm going to have to say one of my favorite apocalyptic films, and I think it's definitely apocalyptic, is A Quiet Place.
Do you know what? I haven't seen it.
You haven't seen that one yet?
No.
Well, I remember when I went to see this movie, I saw it 5 times. That's how much it captured my imagination that deeply, that I was just like, I need to sneak out and I need to see this movie again, and I need to see it again. I think around the 3rd time that I went to see it, everybody was super quiet. You could hear a rat piss on cotton in that room. Like, there was nobody wanting to eat, drink, and that's why it was so incredible, because not even just the sound design of it, but also just, the feeling that you actually got. And I never, I don't want to say never, but, very rarely do you see that in a film where affects people to the point where it's like, if I eat this, like, something might jump at me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was pretty phenomenal. Like, I've never heard a movie theater so quiet, like probably the 3rd time that I saw it. But but there's so many different things that I love about it. Like, there's actually a scene, and not to, spoil it for you or anything, but there's a scene where they're in a drugstore, and just the little motifs, like, in the background are, like, just wonderful, because they're going there for medicine. And if you look to the side on one of the shelves, like, all of them are kind of emptied out, except for all the crunchy snack foods. So there's no potato chips. Nobody's stealing potato chips or anything from the, you know what I mean? Because they know as soon as they start eating it, like, they're done for. So just like little things like that too were really great. And I think that was really the first time where we saw like a comic actor, really step up and just, like, make a really masterful film. That's before Jordan Peele even put out Get Out. So seeing John Krasinski from The Office, like, do a movie like this was just mind-blowing. It really was.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, that's one I'm going to have to see now. Yeah.
And actually, we won't even talk about the creature design. It's pretty fantastic. It's a really, really good movie. I would definitely recommend that for sure. And I know they got a sequel coming up, and I'm kind of not necessarily against it, but, like, the reason why it works so well is because you knew so little. And once you get into the, like, origins and stuff like that, then it's like, I don't care. I don't care where these things came from. I just know they're here, So I know that they're going to get into the backstory of certain things and whatnot. And it's just like, is it really necessary? No, not really. I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. But do you have another one, Craig, that you want to address?
Actually, the way you've just talked about that, it just reminded me of there was a film a long time ago back in the UK, and I don't know if it got out to the States, but it was called Threads.
Oh my God, yes. Terrifying.
Because we were all told to watch that at school.
Oof.
So I was in comprehensive school, and we were watching it because obviously at the time there was a lot of things going on where there was a possible threat of nuclear attack, and there was all these things going on. I remember watching that film and thinking, shit, the way it was done was very kind of understated. Mm-hmm. And the performances in it were so real, and I just remember being terrified after watching that movie for a long time. It really shook me, and it was a very uncomfortably, almost that kind of docudrama type take, the way they shot it, and it was just extremely uncomfortable, man. Wow, I'll have to watch that again. Actually, that's
what year did that?
Get my little boy to watch.
What year did that come out? Do you remember?
I can't remember, but it's got to be early 90s, early to mid 90s. Got to be, if not earlier.
Well, I'm going to actually, there's, another nuclear film that was actually here in the States, but it was called Miracle Mile. Have you ever seen that?
No.
Miracle Mile is a movie that came out in 1988, starred Anthony Edwards, and it was a really interesting film because, like, he was a musician. It kind of had like this kind of weird, like, St. Elmo's Fire vibe to it, but it was basically like, it was about like this nuke getting ready to hit California, and it's pretty nuts. It's like, it's really beautifully shot, kind of like these Michael Mann like colors and hues within. It's I don't know. It's pretty flashy for an apocalyptic nuclear missile film or whatever. But it's not Threads by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, I've seen Threads, and I think I had nightmares for quite a while.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think we actually watched that in school too.
Yeah. I think kids were encouraged to watch it because like I say, there was this kind of background noise going on where we were all wondering if there was going to be some kind of nuclear attack. And I just, man, that film has sat with me for many a year. And just hearing this, talking about this tonight, I thought, shit, Threads, out of all the films that I can think of, that one's really just came back into my head, and I can see the actors and everything in my head now. I'm going back. I need to watch that again.
I'm going to go back to George Miller, but I have to bring up the fact that Mad Max Fury Road is probably one of the best films I've ever seen, ever. Yeah. I remember when I saw that, like, it was, I was already excited for it because it was, like, you knew it was going to be this big event. But the thing that was so amazing about it is that George is like, old George is like 70-some years old, and he was literally, like, showing up all these young directors. Like, this is how you do it, Sonny. You know what I mean? And
absolutely.
It was wonderful, like, just from the stunt aspects and these new characters, like you got Furiosa coming in, played by Charlize Theron, and I know she didn't get along with with Tom Hardy or whatever. That's like kind of like backstory of when it was filmed or whatever. But like their chemistry was just so wonderful, and it had really nothing to do with love. There was nothing sappy about it. It was just these two warriors that were just trying to survive. And, it had this really deep feminist slant where, like, a woman could actually watch this film, this action film, and it's just like, hey, man, I can relate too. It made everybody strong. Nobody was weak. The men were strong, the women were strong. And, it wasn't some kind of SJW bullshit. It worked so effectively. Those characterizations, you know what I mean? And
well, I think that's what I was saying before, man. It's when somebody understands their craft and their skill that well, and they're just literally everything has, a solid meaning. Everything is layered. It's not just surface bollocks and crap. There's story going on. There's characterization. There's good arcs, and there's incredible performances. I mean, Tom Hardy just keeps getting better and better in everything he does at the moment. The man is really an outstanding actor.
But that's why Doomsday works so well too, because like, your sister in the movie was strong, Rhoda Mitra, you know what I mean? All the women were strong, all the men were strong. There was nothing, there was no weakness, there was no like, it wasn't like, it wasn't a boys club movie. Like everybody got to shine, regardless of your sex. And
exactly. Yeah.
It kind of had that. And honestly, like if you look at those two movies together, I mean, Fury Road and Doomsday, they kind of have the same kind of, they just
a lot
work
of things
so well.
going on there, isn't it? I know there's a lot of little kind of parallels between them, which was very nice to see actually, and a lot of people commented on that as well when Fury Road came out. A lot of people said they were reminiscing about Doomsday, and I remember people it kind of gave Doomsday another spike again and put it back into people's conscience again, which was lovely. So yeah, I mean they're good movies, man. They're good movies, and I think the apocalyptic theme, is something that, like I say, is very much upon everybody. So they're very attractive and intriguing at the moment. But it takes something to make a good one, that's for sure.
Well, I'll tell you a quick story. I'll try to make it as quick as possible. Before I started in this business, I went to my first convention, and that was actually this scenario was actually the thing that made me want to do this for a living. So I'm at a pre-convention dinner, and so like we're there or nobody's there at that particular point. I'm just trying to make it as fast as I can. And then basically what happened was I left for a moment and came back, and like Sid Haig was sitting there, Bill Moseley, Tom Savini, and there's this old man eating cake in my chair because they were all reserved seats, right? So I'm thinking to myself, who the fuck is this old man in my chair? And I get ready to tap him on the shoulder. My friend that was there was looking at me. It was almost like slow motion. She's like, no, don't. And I'm like, what? So the guy wipes his hands, he looks up and he goes, I'm sorry, I'm all sit in your seat. And it's fucking Malcolm McDowell, dude.
Yes.
So basically, like, I'm getting ready to lose my mind. And so the next day, he's calling me over to his table. So as soon as I walk in, I hear, Rob. And I'm like, who the fuck is that? And it's Malcolm McDowell. And he goes over to me, we go over to him and he goes, are you going to see my new movie, Doomsday? And I was like, sure. Yeah, 100%, So it was actually Malcolm McDowell that asked me to go to the movie.
Yeah, man, that's fantastic.
Like, what a weird invitation.
Yeah. What a brilliant man. Absolutely brilliant man. It's funny, when we were coming up to the castings and things like that, and Neil said, who would you like to play your dad? And I was like, Malcolm McDowell, because like I love the man.
You chose him?
Well, I'd mentioned it to Neil, but never thought. There was a couple of other names came up, and I knew Bob Hoskins was on at the time, so I was over the moon about that because I absolutely adored that man. Oh, honestly, what a great time I had with him. And then Neil came up and he said, "Guess who's your dad?" And I was like, "Who?" And he went, "Malcolm McDowell." And I swear to God, I nearly shit a brick. I was so happy. I mean, the man is a legend, an absolute legend. And I love him. And he was very, very charming, very funny, and just brilliant. I absolutely adore him.
I remember he looked at my friend because we were just friends at the time, and he looks at me. We kind of messed around a little bit, but we were friends. We're in a relationship. So Malcolm looks at my friend and goes, so what's the situation here with this guy? Is this your mate, your chap, you squeeze? And I'm like, and she's like, no, we're just friends. He puts his arm around me like real tight, right? And he goes, that's a shame. He's a good-looking chap, isn't he? And I'm thinking to myself, is Malcolm like fucking hitting on me? Like, what is going on here?
Well, believe me, you'd be walking fucking very funny if Malcolm had his way.
Oh, by the way, this is probably a parental advisory show, just so you guys know. All right, so we're almost done here, man. Craig, do you have anything else you want to add to the list here?
No, man. My head is kind of going. I don't know. I'm still thinking about Threads now. I'm really, my head is going back to Threads. All the
Yeah,
time.
that's the last thing you want to think about,
Yeah, I'll sleep tonight. Thanks. But yeah.
All right, so listen.
I mean, it's just great.
I think that's a good list. Tell everybody, since this is a horror show, tell everybody about Mara. Let's talk about that real fast. Can you tell us like the plot and all that? And
yeah, I mean, Mara was a creation from the director Clive Tonge and a writer called Jonathan Frank, and it basically they'd come across this sleep demon and sleep paralysis, and I've suffered from that a lot as a child, and sometimes in my kind of adult life it still happens now, but it's one of these remarkable things because people get sleep paralysis, but all over the world, there is this phenomenon where people are sharing the same experience. And they have this thing where a woman or a kind of night hag ends up sitting on your chest. And people believe that she's killed many people in their sleep and she's come to take you away. And so they developed this idea and this story. And it really just started terrifying a lot of people. And then they came up with this script called Mara, which again is one of the names that they call this phenomenon, and that's it really. And so Olga kind of is this. I guess she ends up on this investigation. She's a psychologist, and she meets this guy Bldg, who basically they think is a murderer, and he's telling them all Mara is alive, she's living. And you can't sleep. If you sleep for too long, she'll come into your waking world, and once you see her, that's it. She's going to take you out, and it just turns into this crazy tale, really. And what's lovely about it is, it's not just about a kind of scare jump horror. It is a kind of mythical story, and I think that's one of the things which is hard in kind of distribution terms when people are selling movies. Everything has to be horror. And actually, Clive, what he's done there is quite an intelligent movie because there is a lot of factual based stuff in there. And he was trying, I think, to pull more layers out of it. but again, first time feature maker. So somebody coming in with a story at that level, I thought was great. And Olga pulls off an absolutely brilliant performance. I mean, she was wonderful to work with, but she really went for it in this. And I think they've done a great job on it. And I had lots of fun being Dougie. I mean, essentially, he's just a crazed kind of ex-veteran running around trying to cut his own eyelids off to stay awake. It was great fun.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a crazy little film.
If you feel that way about intellectual horror, I recommend you go see Midsommar, which is the Ari Aster movie that came out. Oh my God, it's fantastic. I think you really dig that one. It's kind of got this like, it's kind of got this Jordan Rowski vibe to it. I think a little bit. It's fucked up.
Nice.
But it's really beautifully shot, and you know what you're talking about from the intellectual aspect, which I love intellectual horror. Like I'm a huge fan of that. And slow burn too, because this is like, you know, this movie burns like a wick, like a slow wick. You know, but I'm really excited for that. When is that? When's that coming out? Is that out yet already, or
what, Mara?
Yeah, Mara.
Yeah. I think it opened in the cinemas in the US at the end of last year, and then it's just hit. It did the UK premieres, and now it's hit Sky, I think, here in the UK, and I think it comes onto Netflix. It may be on the US Netflix now, and it comes to our Netflix soon as well, I think.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Listen, Craig, man, we're friends now, dude. You're amazing. Thank you so much for doing this, and you know, being part of the family here. And I can't thank you enough. This was definitely a treat for me, for sure. I've been wanting to talk to you for a very, very long time. So.
Likewise, man, and thank you for all your support, because you know it is shows like yours that really help actors, and especially in the genre field as well. There's a lot of support out there, but the work you're doing is sterling, man. It's fantastic.
Well, thank you, brother. I appreciate that. Well, listen, guys, that is the show for this week. Apocalyptic Films. Craig, once again, man, thank you so much. Please come back anytime. Love to have you again. Man. It was great.
Cheers, buddy. Thank you very much.
Cheers,
man.
buddy. Take care.
Take care.
All right, guys. And for the rest of you, scary later. Talk to you soon. Bye.